Rock and roll Chicago, rock and roll Chicago, my hometown. Well, I was born in the city, gonna rock your city, Chicago. Chicago rock and rollers are the best here around.
Hey, this is Paul Martin
And Ray the Roadie.
for the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast. What's up, Ray?
I am so excited that we're going to New Orleans.
We are?
Yeah, you said this week we're having a crawfish boil.
Oh. Yeah. No.
What do you mean no?
No.
What do you mean no?
No, you misunderstood. I said we were going to be talking with the Crawpuppies.
Crawpuppies. Are they like
Northwest-
baby crawfish?
Well, they could be, yeah, yes. But the Crawpuppies are a Northwest Indiana band, and we're talking with them.
Oh, so we're not going to New Orleans.
No, it's not in that budget yet.
So I should probably unpack?
Yeah, if you want to live out of a suitcase, that's fine.
Okay, I guess I'm sure the Crawpuppies will be a lot more fun than the crawfish boil anyway.
Well, I'm actually having shrimp boil on Sunday. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Well, it's just probably going to be me and Kim. So. But no, we're speaking with the Crawpuppies today. It's Crawpuppies.
Okay, the Crawpuppies.
Yes.
I've seen them. They are one heck of a band.
They're a great band. They're a great band. I've got to meet them back in about 2005 and worked with them periodically. It's a blue chip quite a bit at the blue chip, as a matter of fact, and they quickly became one of my favorite bands to play there. So we're talking with them today, and we're talking with two of them, Aaron Hedges and Chad Clifford, and we're going to get some insight into them.
All righty, well, I'm going to go get myself a bowl of jambalaya or some etouffee, and I want to hear this podcast. Let's go listen to it.
Let's do so. We're meeting today with Chad Clifford and Aaron Hedges of the Crawpuppies, Northwest Indiana's own Crawpuppies. How you guys doing today?
Hey, guys.
Good. Nice to see you guys.
How you guys surviving this COVID-19 thing here? Or are you surviving it?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I would say for me, it's weird. It gives you some time to kind of reevaluate maybe what's important and what's maybe not as important. I miss seeing people, but it's nice to. I've been enjoying playing and doing some of this technology stuff. Some live streams, and I feel like I'm still playing music. But it really does make you appreciate getting in front of people. We've had the chance to do that a couple times, and maybe gigs that we would have kind of been like, I don't want to say less than excited about. We're real excited about. I mean, it's really kind of made you realize how lucky we are to be able to do what we do. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough time for music and for the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that even as you get back into playing, a lot of the clubs aren't allowed to have as many people, and so. But I understand what you mean by appreciating the audience that you have in front of you.
Yeah, it changes. It's wild how you. In a lot of ways, getting ready. We had our first kind of gig back last weekend, and we play so much that you get used to looking at your watch and saying, okay, I got to be there then. And you know where everything is. Well, this time it was kind of like being in middle school and having a gig. You thought about it all day, and you're like, you're looking around saying, now, do I have picks? Do I have extra strings? All the stuff that when you're in the routine and in the zone, you're not thinking about it as much because all the stuff's still in the car from last night, but now you're kind of scrounging around like a scavenger hunting around your house saying, oh yeah, I got to grab this. So it was nice to have that non-gigging all the time excitement about a gig, and that really made me remember being like I was in high school when I'd have a gig. That's all you thought about all week. I got a gig. So that was kind of a fun refresh of that mentality for me.
Too, as far as I agree with everything what Chad is saying, and you know, it's a double-edged sword with us having more time to be on our technology too, because there's just a lot of being musicians, we're very emotional human beings. So seeing a lot of what's being posted out there, and everybody just clawing at each other and going off on each other, that part has been really tough. Because we're allowed to be on social media more. We're using social media to communicate. And it's really hard to communicate with people right now. So that's been kind of the bad side. But, I think we as people need to breathe before we say some things, and just be conscious that not everybody's on the same page. Taking a stand or not taking a stand. I mean, you're going to be bludgeoned for whatever you say. So that's been, for me, that's been the biggest challenge. I totally appreciate playing. Like Chad said, I mean, some of the gigs are, the benefits. And we got together the first time. What was it, Chad? Back in April, whenever we did that first live or whatever.
Yeah.
We weren't obviously getting really paid to do any of that, but we didn't even put a tip bucket, I don't think, or consciously did. So we were really just excited to play with each other, which we really are. But it was really more so that night, to play for each other. But I think that's the challenge, as musicians and as us in general, that we really need to be conscious about not getting too wrapped up in arguing with each other. About stuff. I mean, we all have our opinions, and I don't need to hear them on Facebook. I'd rather pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Paul, I see you see this. What are you thinking, buddy?" I think we really need to talk to each other. I think social media has gotten us too far away from talking to each other versus just posting behind a keyboard.
Well, we see that in young kids today. I mean, my kids, I can text them, and they'll answer my text, but then I call them 2 minutes later, and they don't answer the phone. I go, "How do you not answer the phone?"
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, I'm glad to see that you have problems with Paul too. It's not just me.
I don't answer your text on purpose.
For a lot of people, I think that they're finally feel like they have a voice. There's a lot of people that never felt like they had they were ever heard, and now people feel like they've got a voice and they've got a platform, so they better come up with something to say. So they say things without even necessarily thinking it through. A lot of people, but we are lucky because being in a band. And you guys know this. I mean, it's not like even in a local band like Crawpuppies are. I mean, people do kind of care a little bit about what you say, and you have to be careful, and you have to value that, and you have to listen to other people's opinions. I mean, none of us are in any position to lose fans over something that we don't have any control over. And there's a lot of times I have to bite my tongue, and a lot of times I have to, like Aaron said, I'd really much rather talk to somebody and get a. I don't want a one-liner here, and then I'm going to up you with one-liner. Let's have a serious debate and discussion, and I'm all for that. In fact, I like talking to people that I technically disagree with much more than talking to people I agree with. I mean, what do you get out of talking to people you agree with? Just reinforcement. I mean, I don't need that.
Kim and I talk about taping our thumbs. We have to tape my thumbs because I don't want to respond to this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always some of that. I mean, it's one thing to respond to it if you're going to give it the time that it deserves to have a back and forth debate, and you're not going to let it get personal. But people are on edge right now. Everyone's in a no one's got any real answers. We've never dealt with anything like this before, and we're bored and we're frustrated, and I think everybody's on that spirit, and they're all in this different gray of this is a complete scam versus this is the end of the world coming. We're all somewhere in between, and everyone wants to fight about where they're at in between. Makes absolutely no sense, really. It's we're all in between, and whether you're here and I'm here, what's the point in arguing? We're both in the middle.
Right.
Stuck in the middle.
It's stuck in the middle.
So have you got any gigs lined up coming up come July?
Yeah, well, 4th
Any
of July.
definite ones?
Yeah, well, as definite as can be, right? 4th of July, we're at Valpo doing the fireworks. I've got a few solo things that have opened up, which are good because they're nice and kind of me tucked in the corner, and it's not quite, the same as. But the band's got a few things. We got some private parties coming up. We played last night, and it was another virtual show. That was in Illinois. We did Michigan last Saturday, and that was at the Round Barn. So it's slowly coming back. Everyone wants to book October. I don't know. They might have to add a couple weekends into October because there's only 4. But everyone keeps calling and saying, "Oh, well, we'll have you in October." And I'm like, October's going to rock because everyone's every June, July, and August gig is something with October.
That's why they call it Rocktober, right?
That's right.
Where did the name Crawpuppies come from?
Yeah, I wish there was a better story. I'll tell you.
You can make one up if you want to.
I should make up a good story. We were playing at this place called Angelo's Sicilian Cart, which is this place in Maryville. And the band kind of formed out of a jam night. My friend Mike Moore and I would play acoustic, and one day Aaron just kind of came along and sat in, and he knew every song that we played. So I looked at Mike, and Mike looked at me and like, "Do you know this guy?" And I'm like, "No, but he was great, So he just would show up, and so he just started kind of being there all the time. So we just said, well, let's start doing some gigs outside of this. But we needed a name, so we booked a gig at Angelo's, and right next door to Angelo's was this Popeye's chicken restaurant, and they sold some dish called Crawpuppies, and it said, "Tonight Crawpuppies on special." So when the bar owner said, "What's the name of your band?" We're like, "Well, you put it on the wrong side." And he looked over there and it says Crawpuppies tonight. And so that was just kind of like the joke of it. And then we kind of always wanted to change the name, but then people started getting tattoos and stuff. So we got locked in, we don't have any tattoos, but we had a couple of fans that got our logo tattooed. So
I've got one.
But, and then it was just, the funny thing is there's, in band names, you can get cool band names, but when you have really, really cool band names, there's always 1,000 bands named, Sabotage or whatever. So you never, but there's never been another band named Crawpuppies as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. So you search us, you either get a really killer Cajun recipe or you get our band. So it works out all right.
Very good.
So when did the other members join? And didn't you have somebody before Mike?
Yeah, before Mike was a guy named Angelo Chico, and he was in the band for about 8 years. And then it had been the 4 of us for a long time. And then last year we got Truman on board on drums.
So Chade, you're doing some stuff from home. I noticed some acoustic stuff. You said you had some solo shows coming up.
Yeah, I counted them up. I've done about 35 live streams from my little basement bar, which has been fun for me because honestly, Paul, as a singer, you get out of shape and you get not used to singing for a long period of time, and you go to sing and it's just not there anymore. So
right.
I was a little bit afraid of that, not to mention my hands not being able to do what they need to do. So I started saying, well, once a week I'll sit from home and I'll play a couple songs and I'll just tune in. And I was really impressed and honored by the amount of people that would join me. So and then when you've got 20 to 30 people sitting there watching you, it's real hard to let it go. So a lot of those little shows turned into 3-hour gigs that I ended up doing that really in a lot of ways helped me get through this whole thing that I don't know that I would, it really, I felt connected to people and it was giving them things because I would get little notes from people saying, I had a terrible day, but you played blah, blah, whatever, Stand By Me or whatever. And boy, or people saying we had a big bonfire and you were on our TV. And I mean, I'm honored by that. You know, that's the coolest thing, is to think that what I do can make someone's ability to get through this a little bit better. I mean, that's amazing to me.
That's a 3 hours of time too, that you don't have to be seeing stuff you don't want to see on Facebook too.
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of that, and it's funny because, Aaron, that you say that, because I get these people that are all like, "Oh, you know, Chad. Well, we like Chad, and we should all get together." And I think once these two people get together, I'll post on Facebook. They're either going to change their views on life, or they're going to hate each other. But it's weird, it does unify people. It's crazy how people, when they find something in common, you can maybe grow from there. You know, so even if liking the same kind of music allows those people to grow and maybe even think about each other in a different way, I mean, I think that's very valuable.
What about you, Aaron? Have you had any problem keeping your licks up?
I'm kind of where Buddy Guy is. I saw an article that he basically hasn't played in like 2 months. I've always, you know, I don't really practice anymore. I probably should, right? But with the band playing as much as we played, the habit is, you know, if we wanted to learn something, you know, I might learn a song or something, or a Beatles tune or something. But for the most part, we just played so much we never had to practice. So I really only play anymore to play the gigs, or play the gigs for the most part. So no, I haven't really played much at all. I wish I could play solo and sing solo guitar for 3 hours. I could probably do it for 20 minutes, but I don't know that anybody would want to see that for that long either. But
probably could, but yeah, but it does. You know, you do see. I've seen a lot of people kind of start. I was in a pretty lucky place when I started doing this, because I'd done some live things like that, and I'd done solo shows. There are people that are just trying it now for the first time, and I realize how lucky I am that I've got years of a catalog that I've established, and a level of comfort in playing songs, and also the ability to bail out when I know it's going down. You know, I got a parachute. You know, someone might ask for a song, and you're thinking, "Oh, this is nice and easy," but then you forgot about that chorus, and you're like, "Oh my God!" And you see it coming up, and it's like, parachute. Okay, and that, you know, I'll just do the verse one more time and get the hell out of it. You know. But that's the one thing when you're just by yourself, you're like, oh yeah, if you don't know that chord, you don't play it. But when you're playing with others, they're like, oh no, it goes here. And you're like, shut up, it doesn't go here. You know, not this version. You know.
Well, Aaron, you mentioned the Beatles. Tell us how the Mega Beatles got started, because you guys are obviously the main drive behind that, and tell us about that.
That's a Chad story right there.
Yeah, well, the Mega Beatles was just the Chris and Lou band and the Crawpuppies. You know, I've known Lou Samaniego for a long time, and we always talked that someday we would put some kind of Beatles thing together. And it just took a little time, and then we just continued to find people that were like us with the Beatles, you know. And we did our first thing, the first Beatles in the Barn that we did. It was the Crawpuppies and the Chris and Lou band. We knew it would be inevitable that we'd put the two bands together because we're all good friends, you know. So what ended up happening is we just said, let's combine these two bands. And because it was 9 guys at times, it was mega. So we started doing that. And it's really unfortunate because we had a killer show for County Line Orchard this year. One night we were going to do the Rubber Soul album. And the next night we were going to do the 50-year anniversary of Let It Be.
Oh, it's going to be a two-night show?
Two-night show, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
And we had 2 killer sets. I mean, they were – hopefully we'll get to do those shows. We're talking with the folks at the Room about doing a show. So hopefully we'll do those virtually. But virtual is another whole thing, you know. It's like I was nervous last night at a level I don't get nervous when I play – when the music dissipates into the air, you know, you're not as responsible for it as when it's recorded and broadcast because it's preserved. You know what I mean? I could screw up a chord here and there, and unless you were standing right there in that minute, you're not going to hear it. But you once it's preserved, I mean, that adds a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. The best part of preserved, Chad, I got to post that video clip I'm thinking about it, and I'm crying. I'm laughing. Chad is, he's singing, and we're doing a Zeppelin song, and he's into it, and then he hits the back of the corner of the riser,
and I start to go down. Thankfully, they edited it right there. There's a nice cut there, but I'm like, I start to. You can post it. It was. I
was harmed.
I thought I was going to bite the dust, but I don't think I missed the chord. I think I got to the right chord, but it was challenging. And I'm just thinking, oh God, I hope they didn't catch that. But it's.
I didn't even know what happened.
You got to have bloopers.
Watching the replay, and I'm like, did I just see it? So I rewound it. It was preserved forever.
That's
the problem with these video things.
So the Mega Beatles have kind of taken on a life of their own, haven't they? Like you said, if you have to.
We got pretty lucky. We've been able to play some of these. I've been a Beatles fan since I was a little kid, and I used to go to Beatles Fest in high school, and we've gotten to play there. How cool is that? The one thing about this whole COVID thing that's really disappointing is I was supposed to go to Liverpool and London and play Beatles at the International Beatles Fest this year. And it wasn't the whole band because it was, getting 9 guys to coordinate their schedules kind of challenging. But I was just going to go do it this year and check it out. But this whole thing kind of took. You remember that Simpsons episode or the Seinfeld episode where it's going to be the summer of George? Remember that? And George Costanza, everything. This was going to be the summer of Chad. I had all these things planned, and COVID had other ideas. So
this would have been our 11th year doing Beatles in the Barn.
Yeah, it would have been our 11th. Yeah, and it's really that's built into something. We were going to do the Hammond Beatle Fest. We had another show at Wicker Park planned. We still have the Acorn Theater for Mega Beatles in October, where everything else is going to be. So, so hopefully that will end up being that'll end up happening, which is a great. You guys have played the Acorn before, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's a cool little place.
Yeah, it is. Very cool little room. Very cool room. Which I don't know about fitting 9 guys up there, but
yeah, it was a little packed, but we're tight. Well, I don't know. We're not going to have to violate the 6-foot rule a little bit, but
yeah. Well, hopefully by then we're all back in shape and playing where we want to play and do what we want to do.
I think a lot of it just depends on really what the numbers do. My store is really slowed down because we do some of this virtual lesson stuff, but as far as getting people in a lesson room, that's still everyone's still a little weary about that.
Well, tell us a little bit about Front Porch Music.
It's been there since 1991. It's a little music store that's in addition to selling things, we teach lessons, we repair. We've got a little venue in the basement that's a coffee house, and we have open mics on Thursdays, or we did for many, many years. They're kind of on hiatus now. And then we'd get touring acts that would come and play at our little coffee house down in the basement. 1992, I stopped in there just as a guy to play at the open mic, and I fell in love with the place. So I just said, I gotta work here, because everyone there was just kind of great people, and everything about it was appealing to me. So started working there in 95, and I worked there for a long, long time. I worked my way up to the manager of the place. And then in 2007, I bought the place from the original owners, and then the whole economy crashed. But we kind of built it back up a little bit, and it's never been the most lucrative venture, but spiritually it's very lucrative. It means a lot to me, and it's meant a lot to people. I think it's awesome to think that the little store I'm involved with has taught tens of thousands of people to play instruments. How cool is that for to do something like that with your life and be able to share what music has given so much to me. So it's awesome to have been able to share.
When you started there, did you teach guitar? Is that what you
taught
did?
a little guitar, yeah. I just taught kind of beginner guitar.
It was a far cry from working at Blockbuster Video, right?
Yeah, it was far cry from working at Blockbuster. I actually worked at Blockbuster, the music department. It was much better than that, yeah. I liked it a lot more, and it was just I don't know. For me, I went to Columbia College for music business, so it was a perfect fit for me. And I didn't, like Aaron said, I'd worked in the corporate world a little bit and realized that wasn't the where I wanted to go. I didn't like that idea.
Well, Blockbuster's gone now, and
yeah, exactly.
Front Music is still there. So.
I'm still there, so yeah. So
we'll be right back.
We'll
be right back after a word from our sponsor, Front Porch Music, 515 East Lincoln Way, Valparaiso, Indiana. Give them a call, 219-464-4700. Now back to the show.
That's the best ad I've gotten all week. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, what would you guys call your genre of music? I mean, I guess it'd be classic rock to some degree or some alternative rock in there and kind of mix it up. Right?
It's been called power pop, which is like, I don't know what they call that. Is it catchy melodies? What would you say, Chad?
Well, I think, power pop tends to be a word that gets tossed around. It's, I would call it music that's inspired by the great music of the 60s and 70s and a little bit of the 80s. I mean, I try to make sure our music doesn't sound particularly dated or in a of a particular time. Because I have always kind of liked that aspect. Growing up and when I was in bands before the Crawpuppies, we always tried to write songs that were of a specific time and that you could hear what else was going on. But when you're like us and you've been playing for so long, you don't want the songs to kind of run their course before the band has, if that makes sense. I'm not one for really labeling it as much as, as far as the covers that we play. I think most of the covers that we play match the originals that we play. It's hard to know. I think if people like bands like The Replacements and Big Star and Cheap Trick and the Beatles and Sweet, REM and U2, they would like us.
Tell us, you've got 2 CDs out, correct?
Correct.
And the first one was called Peaceful Amnesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is World's Much Bigger.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about those, about the songs on there. Yeah, I know. I have a couple of favorites myself on those.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the first one was songs that I had accumulated for quite a few years. Playing, even with as much as we played, when you're playing a lot, it's sometimes hard to break in originals because you when you're an entertainer, you kind of know what the strongest songs for getting people on the dance floor, getting people to respond to you are. So breaking in originals isn't always the easiest thing to do. So when you do it, they better be kind of worth doing. Does that make sense? Like I always felt like, if you got a packed dance floor and they're all singing along and going, and you break into an original, it better be able to create that same kind of energy. So I think the first album really has mostly songs that we had kind of tested in an audience sense a lot more than the second album.
What if I called you up and told you I was sorry, felt so lonely? Tomorrow looks much worse off than today. I'm out of my head, feeling so lonely, losing the godforsaken man. And I feel like I've been wasting all my time.
This is the first album we wrote of songs that people were had come to see us play enough times that they were waiting for those songs, if that makes sense, because they'd already kind of heard them live for a couple years. And then the second album gets a little more artsy. We actually have some songs on there that we don't play live because, they're just not, they're more listening kind of songs, I guess. But it's hard for me to really, they're like my kids. I like some of them more than others on certain days, but I love all my kids. You know, some days it's like, oh, this one, you know, is under my skin. But I'm proud of both albums. I sometimes need to step away from a little bit and then listen to them again and say, oh, yeah, you know, it's hard because you always hear, when you write a song, you always hear every little thing that you wish you maybe would have tweaked this way or that way. But after a while, you get to listen to them more objectively, like with strangers' ears. You know what I mean? You get to hear. So, but I'm proud of both albums. I would like to do more. I've got plans to do more. I don't know. The industry's so weird right now that I don't know exactly what to do with songs, you know.
Now you did most of the writing, right, Chad? Or did you do all the writing?
Well, I did. There was input from everybody, but the melodies and, you know, the words and the structures of the songs are pretty much mine. I don't want to say that it was all me, but they're from my brain. At least the ideas came, and then, you know, we all as a team, you know, collaborated on them. You know, not to say that there weren't great ideas from everyone, but I tend to be the one that does most of the writing. And Mike Curtis has written some really cool songs as well, but he hasn't gotten any of them completed at this point.
I think the best part of both of those albums, and when people ask me, you know, what to expect, and I say, sit down and listen, because each song is going to be really different. And provoke a different, you know, some of the songs are like, you would think that, you know, on somebody's album, like, you know, World's Much Bigger or I Want to Know. I mean, they're just right in your face rock and roll songs. But then Chad will do a song like We or you know, My Wife or something. And it's just like, where did this come from? It's like it doesn't belong on one album, but that's the Crawpuppies. The Crawpuppies can play so many different things and play so many different types of events. That's kind of where the original music goes, where Chad has an idea, and it's not like he's looking for it to fit on that album. That's the part that I love the most about it, is that you can listen to one album and get a lot of different emotions, you know, stirred up.
Yeah, if you remember, you know, in the 80s and 90s, you guys would probably remember, you'd shop your music to people, and they would always say, well, we're looking for a sound. You know, everyone always wanted every band to have a sound. And I was terrible about that, because I'm like, I didn't ever want to hear an album that sounded the same to me. You know what I mean? I tried to make an album that you could listen to 10 years from now and it would still be musically at least relevant. And you know, you listen to some of these, you know, you listen to a Def Leppard album and the songs could be great, but those drum sounds, eventually you're like, okay, God, I wish you would have just played regular drums, because, you know, because they become a distraction. You know what I mean? So I do think being able to do these albums self-produced without a label and someone, you know, that's a double-edged sword, because it is good to listen to other people's opinions sometimes, but both of those albums were self-funded, so we kind of got to completely decide how they would come out. And the fact that they're, you know, this, you know, Aaron mentions the song My Wife. I had that song before the World's Much Bigger album, and I was so proud of that song, and I really liked it, and it didn't really belong on the Crawpuppies album per se, but because it, you know, it was me and like a string quartet.
And I'll always put you first, for better and for worse. Give you all I have to give, for as long as we both shall live. And you know me too well, you're my life, you're my wife.
I'd written that song for my 10-year wedding anniversary to my wife, and I gave it to her as a gift, but I was proud of it. So I kept thinking to myself, you know, do I just keep this and this is our private little thing? No, I should share this. You know, it's kind of like, why would you not, you know, if you're a painter and you've got all these great paintings and you got one of the nicest paintings you ever did at home. Why wouldn't you put it in the collection? So
Right.
I felt like we needed, so the Crawpuppies has always been a real good avenue for me to be able to do that. You know, I model what I do kind of after guys like Jeff Tweedy and Neil Young. You know, you can see Neil Young play solo acoustic. You can see him with this band. You can see him with Crazy Horse. And every time you see Neil Young, it's a little bit different. But if Neil Young writes a song with Buffalo Springfield and wants to play it with Crazy Horse, the band just plays it. You know what I mean? I've always never liked this compartmentalizing who you are. So I think the Crawpuppies albums do a good job of showing the diversity of the band and our ability to play different types of songs. You know,
We were told that we should sound more like, back in 1982, by a major record producer.
yeah.
Told that we need to sound more like a flock of seagulls.
And that is a terrible move.
Yeah.
Well, then we, before Crawpuppies, we never really shopped the Crawpuppies that much because the record industry had already kind of taken its turn and you could get more out of doing it independently. Not that we wouldn't have considered a deal had one come along, but when I was shopping for things, they would say things to me like, well, at times my other bands, at times I hear stuff like U2 in there. And then there's times where it gets a little bit more hard rocky. You know, like the Digital Hair Band was confusing because this was the early 90s where they were saying, it sounds kind of alternative, but it's also very rock and roll. We don't know what to do with it. And I laughed because that's when everything was kind of Poison-esque, Warrant and Poison. And I'm shopping this label and all the labels they're saying, yeah, this is good stuff, but it's kind of in between alternative and hard rock and we don't know what to do with it. Well, they were idiots because it wasn't long before Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all this, and Alice in Chains came along, which was alternative but hard rock.
Right.
So I mean, had they known that was kind of the trend it was going, but I mean, back then the labels wanted to simply pigeonhole you so they could market you in a formula. They didn't want to redevelop a marketing plan. They wanted to be able to take you guys and turn you guys into something you weren't,
Right.
and be able to easily market you guys, and you guys would have been miserable.
Right.
Although I'd like to see you guys do a flock of seagulls kind of thing.
No. I could go for the hair, though. The hair
That's good. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I had some of that going.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that probably one of my favorite Crawpuppy songs is Three Little Things.
Well, I could bring it all down to three little things. The bourbon, the heartbreak in you, the lies and deception in you, the good times, the bad times in you.
I mean, I know what I want it to be about, but is there a story behind it?
Yeah, there's a story behind it. It's really about it's about addiction, I suppose. It's about without getting too personal. It's a lot about the dynamic of the Crawpuppies at the time. I would say it's about band members and people change, and there's things that work for a while and then they stop working. But it's really about not wanting to tell somebody how to live their life, but at some point your path and their path become irreconcilable, and you don't want to blame the person, but you can blame three little things or things about that person's personality that really just shot a hole in it, And I wrote it vaguely about, people that I knew, but it's also people in a relationship that everything's going great, but there's these little things about the person and these little obstacles that get in the way. And it's not really something that people can necessarily help. It could be that someone's got a terrible temper, or it could be that someone's got a drinking problem, or someone's got,
Could be a little pet peeve, right?
it could be a pet peeve. It could be anything. So I leave it vague and open. And a lot of people like that song. It's ironic because when we first wrote that song, I didn't think it was necessarily a Crawpuppy song, so I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll give this song away to another band. And I remember I just mentioned giving that song away, and Chris Karp at the time was like, "You're not giving that song away," because he really liked that one. I like that one too. I mean, I'm proud of that one. I think that one stands up, But I leave it open ended for people. But the concept is loosely. There's always obstacles, and sometimes those obstacles get hard to reconcile.
But I love the tune. It's a great song. Great song.
Thank you. As a songwriter, you go through phases where everyone kind of starts writing songs like "I love you" and "You love me" and "Let's go to the movies," and and then eventually you start listening to all your songs. You think, "Gosh, I got nothing to say," and then you get philosophical and deep, and you write crazy, spiritual lyrics that really are just BS gibberish. And then somehow you find your way in between those two, and that's where you can write some good songs. At least that's been my experience. And I think that lyrics for me is always the most important part of a song, in my opinion, but always the hardest part.
So where can we find any of you guys social media wise? Speaking of social media, or find you on the World Wide Web?
Crawpuppies is just facebook.com/Crawpuppies, crawpuppies.com. And then as far as, I'm not sure what Chad's Facebook URL, but mine's facebook.com/Aaron.K.Hedges.
I'm just facebook.com, Chad Clifford. I think I got in there just in time. I didn't have to put my initial in.
You have a website too, don't you, Chad, or no?
Yeah, it's crawpuppies.com, and then I have chadcliffordmusic.com, which is I kind of use that as a hub for Front Porch, the Crawpuppies, my old high school band, Digital Hair, and my solo gigs. I just kind of have a little place where you can kind of get involved in all that stuff. So
Mega Beatles was open too, so we got facebook.com/Mega Beatles as well. Crawpuppies music is on iTunes and all those avenues for people to download. If you're lucky, you can ask Alexa to play some of them too.
Yeah, she will, but sometimes she gets confused.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, I tell you, it is a great time for music when you can just ask for a song and hear it like this. It's not like the old days where you had to go buy the 45 or find a cassette or all that stuff. My son has just recently gotten into vinyl, and I have a little bit too. Again, kind of the fun of playing a record. You know what I mean? But it is highly inconvenient compared to just speaking and hearing a song on command.
It is, but I remember the days of sitting and being able to read the album as you're listening to the music, and especially a double album or a one that opened up, and reading the front and the back and the inside and everything else. I kind of miss that,
I do too. I mean, it can still be done. It's amazing. I put on my copy of The Wall the other day to listen to the Pink Floyd album in its entirety, and it skipped so badly that I said, well, maybe I should just get a fresh new copy, a nice copy of The Wall. And it's like $45 for the album. And I'm like, no, I'll stick with my scratchy old copy and yell for Alexa to play it. Because, remember when you think about vinyl, vinyl was, what would you give, like $4 to $6 in the 70s for an album, which is a lot of money when you're a kid. Had to mow a couple lawns for that. And then, vinyl became, they couldn't give it away. So they stopped selling it. And now they remastered it and made it a little bit thicker and quadruple or I don't even know how many times the price, just 10 times the price, and it's selling again, which is crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah. Speaking of vinyl, my dad's 45 from back in 1959. You can find one on eBay for about $300.
Wow, that's great.
Insane. And Alexa will play it, which just blows my mind. I can't get it to play Crawpuppies sometimes, but I can get it to play Tornado by the Giants.
That was your dad's band?
Yep.
That's very cool. What did he play?
He played guitar and bass. That I know of, his song Tornado by the Giants with a J is the first song I've ever heard with a tremolo on it as the main tempo drive of the song. That was pretty early on in the effects world.
In the Rockabilly Hall of Fame or like that?
Yeah, he's in the International Rockabilly Hall of Fame. But what's weird about it is back then I still didn't think it was that big a deal because again I never heard him play. Nobody had ever heard of the songs, but now it's in a Kia commercial. It's in a 2017 Shirley MacLaine movie.
Wow.
And that song Tornado is like the Brown Eyed Girl of Europe. So you can find bands all over the place covering it. And he died back in 2004. He never got to see any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it's the thing with vinyl and the old music. I mean, that's a time and genre that we're never going to get back. And thank heavens for, technology when it comes to that, because it's preserving a lot of that. And a lot of the people that are old enough to remember those times, which obviously I'm not old enough to remember the 50s, but I was at least old enough, in the 70s to be able to be somewhat close to that decade, or those decades. And things like this podcast that you're doing and all of that stuff is just helping to keep a lot of that music alive, which I think is amazing.
I just brought it up. Yeah, it's on YouTube, The Giants Tornado. I'll have to take a listen to that.
Yeah, there's a stripper version. So if you're offended by the song is kind of about a girl that's kind of crazy. I don't know who did that, but it's fun to go YouTube a lot of the people that covered the song. And I think it was probably around the time when my dad passed that somebody from France sent me a cover of some band in France playing the song on a boat. I hadn't heard that song since I was a kid. We used to take those 45s that were worth about $300 these days. We used to throw them around as Frisbees. We had hundreds of them at the house. I'm glad I saved a few. Tom Lounges has one at his record shop, so that was cool. I like that part of my dad was saved in time, and everybody will now remember, him as a guidance counselor, as a teacher, as all of those things. And I think that's the best gift that he could have left for me was his music, because everybody identifies with it. Chad's got kids, and whether they appreciate his music now or not, later on life they're gonna think twice about it, because their dad's probably gonna go before they do, and that's gonna be the only thing. That'll be the only thing that they have tangible is in their hand is those memories, and music is a really important thing when it comes to our lives and our memories and things like that.
Yes, it is.
So true. So true.
Yeah, I did the same thing because my dad recorded an album with his band in the 60s, and I was lucky enough to get a copy of it. They recorded, and it was played on WLS like 2 or 3 times, but it was nowhere near as big as the single by Aaron's dad. But I mean, just getting that and holding that 45 and just thinking about all the work they put in. I mean, that's the thing about music is back then you really had to go all out to it was a big endeavor to record and cut a piece of plastic. I mean, nowadays anyone with a microphone and an interface can or a computer can write a song and publish it and get it out in the world, but it's not quite the same endeavor that it used to be. And I'm glad that we live in a time when all that older stuff can be preserved, because it's definitely worth, it's definitely worth preserving that stuff and seeing it and being able to appreciate it forever. That's the one good thing about the technology is once it's digitally copied, it exists forever.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us today.
And, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys doing this. I look forward to seeing it. Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun talking with you and talking with, like I said, talking with a lot of the bands and getting insight into their careers and how they've gotten from where they started out to where they are now. And you guys are no exception. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks a lot. Hopefully we'll see you guys real soon.
All right. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Well, that was the nearly world famous Crawpuppies. And
hey, you were right. They are more fun than a crawfish boil in New Orleans. That was a ball.
Yes, it was. And it was great talking with them and getting some insight into them and into the Mega Beatles as well, the other group that they've kind of put together. And they're a great band, very talented guys.
Most definitely, and it just as with many of our past interviewees we've had and stuff, if it wasn't for this COVID thing, they're all busy. They got so many things going on. They're involved in the different bands and different things. It's crazy how much stuff they're doing, and now it's just come to a screeching halt.
Yes, it has, unfortunately. By the way, how was your etouffee?
It was fantastic. The spice was just right. And I got a big bowl. It lasted the entire podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Okay. Well, and I'm glad you enjoyed that. I'll have to maybe stop by Popeye's Chicken and get some myself,
There you go. I just made mine in the Instant Pot.
No, that's good.
I'm quite the chef.
I know.
Yes.
I've sampled your breakfast.
That's right.
Would you cooked it in Instant Pot too, I think, did you?
Probably. I probably did use the Instant Pot, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or the George Foreman grill.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Okay.
Well, it was great seeing the guys this week. We'll see you guys next Tuesday for another installment of the world-famous Rock and Roll Chicago podcast.
Okay. Sounds great. Talk to you then.
See you next week.
Bye.
Rock and roll Chicago, rock and roll Chicago, my hometown. Well, I was born in the city, gonna rock your city, Chicago. Chicago rock and rollers are the best here out.
The Rock and Roll Chicago podcast does not own the rights to any of the music that's played on this podcast.
The music is used to promote the band or musicians that are interviewed.
Road to Rock Radio is proud to welcome Paul Martin of M&R Rush and the Dancing Noodles and Ray the Roadie, the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast. Join Paul and Ray as they bring you weekly interviews from bands that have rocked Chicago. It's the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast, Monday night at 6 on Road to Rock Radio.
Chicago.